There is a country off the coast of Europe where people apologise to you for bumping into them, where strangers at a bar track an invisible queue that nobody announced, where not bad means excellent, interesting means catastrophic, and we should get coffee sometime means goodbye forever, where a person will stand at a completely empty crossing at midnight, no cars, no witnesses, nobody watching, and wait for the light to turn green anyway. Because in Britain, everyday life runs on a set of unwritten rules so deeply embedded that locals follow them without thinking. Most visitors arrive expecting politeness and reserve. What they find instead is something far more intricate, a culture built on invisible agreements and unspoken codes, so specific they generate endless confusion online. Once you understand the hidden logic, everything clicks, and the first surprise doesn't start with the history or the humour. It starts the moment you try to join a line. The queue is where it begins, not because it is the most dramatic rule, but because it is the most honest one. In documented social experiments run for BBC programmes in the early 2000s, researchers found that witnessing someone jump a queue produced a stress response in bystanders comparable to a minor physical threat, not irritation, something closer to being genuinely wronged. The queue is not a practical arrangement, it is a portable social contract, assembled silently and without a word in every bus stop and post office and theme park entrance across the country. And here is where it gets interesting. It extends even to the pub, where there is no visible line at all. Everyone at the bar tracks exactly who arrived before them. The bar staff are expected to honour that invisible order, violate it and watch what doesn't get said. That silence is the first rule of British life. Someone walks into you on a busy street, you apologise to them, not sarcastically, not reflexively, genuinely, with a small flinch of social remorse, as though the collision were entirely your fault regardless of the geometry. Kate Fox, whose 2004 study of English behaviour remains the most precise document on the subject, concluded that the British sorry has been so completely stripped of its literal meaning that it no longer functions as an admission of fault. It is social lubricant, a verbal gesture that smooths friction back into ease before anyone has time to feel the scratch. And the logic runs deeper than politeness. The goal is not accuracy. The goal is the restoration of social equilibrium in the shortest possible time. And the correct response, by the way, when someone apologizes to you, is to apologize back. Two people, neither of whom did anything wrong, both sorry. The system working perfectly. If a British person passes you in a corridor, catches your eye and says, "all right," they are not asking if you are all right. They do not want to know. The correct response, regardless of how you actually are, is "all right," delivered with a brief nod, while continuing to walk. Stopping to answer is a social error. Telling the truth is a category error. One person described going to their doctor, being greeted with, "How are you?" automatically responding, "Good thanks, how are you?" and spending 5 minutes in small talk before the doctor asked why they'd actually come in. This is not a malfunction, and this is the system working exactly as designed. The greeting is a social handshake, a signal that says, "I acknowledge you, I am not a threat, we may both continue." Nothing more is required, and living the dream, when you hear it said with a flat smile on a Monday morning, means the opposite of every word. The anthropologist Desmond Morris, documenting British social behaviour over decades, noted that weather commentary functions as the only opener guaranteed to be class neutral, politically safe and universally available. You are not commenting on atmospheric pressure. You are performing a small act of social permission, testing whether the other person is open to contact before attempting anything more. A grey Tuesday morning in Manchester carries underneath its surface an entire grammar of social invitation. I am open to conversation. I will not demand anything. You may engage or you may not. The rule has one fascinating inversion that visitors always get wrong. If you complain about British weather to a British person, that lands badly. We can suffer it. We can moan about it endlessly to each other. But the moment an outsider joins in, something shifts. The weather, it turns out, belongs to us. The round system in British pubs has been documented since the 1930s, when the Mass Observation Project, a social research initiative recording British everyday life, captured testimony about group drinking that remains accurate today. The principle is simple. When you are in a group, drinks are bought in rotation, one person buying for everyone each time. What is not simple is the moral weight attached to it. The invisible mental ledger every participant keeps, tracking who has bought, whose turn is approaching, who has been suspiciously slow, is not meanness. It is the administration of reciprocity. Missing your round is not described as awkward or inconvenient. It is described as a breach. And there is a protocol for opting out. You must declare, I'll buy my own before the first round begins. Declaring it after, once you have assessed the group size and drink prices, is read as calculation. And then there is the person who always arrives late and leaves just as their round approaches. Everyone notices, nobody says a word. If someone lets you out at a junction, flashes their lights on a narrow country road, or pulls over to let you through, you raise your hand. No exceptions. One experienced van driver documented the calibrated vocabulary of this gesture. One finger lifted from the steering wheel means cheers, mate. 4 fingers means thank you. A full open palm means thank you very much. A wordless hierarchical system of gratitude operated at 40 miles an hour between strangers who will never meet again. What makes this remarkable is where it operates, on open roads, with no queue, no witness, no enforcement whatsoever. You could do nothing and nobody would ever know, and yet the hand goes up every time, because the form matters even in the absence of any audience. The person at the empty red light and the person raising their hand on an empty country road are governed by exactly the same logic. Nobody is watching. That is precisely when it matters most. Anyone who crosses the threshold of a British home must be offered tea. This is not a soft cultural preference. One person described keeping a full tea supply despite never drinking it themselves, specifically for guests and tradespeople. Another documented their mother working through an entire drinks menu for visitors: tea, coffee, water, squash, wine, beer, gin. The offer is not about the drink, it is the verbal signal that someone is welcome in your space. Refusing the offer is acceptable, expected at least once. But the offer itself is non-negotiable, because something is communicated in the making of it that cannot be communicated any other way. The home, as you will come to understand, is the most protected and most private space in British culture. The tea offer is how the door between outside and inside is ceremonially crossed. It is not hospitality, it is more fundamental than that. It is permission to exist in the same space. Do not knock on a British person's door without being invited. This is not a preference. It operates across class, region and generation with remarkable consistency. What reads as ordinary warmth in other cultures, the spontaneous visit, the dropped-by coffee, the unannounced hello, reads in Britain as a presumption of intimacy not yet earned. The home is a private space, and crossing its threshold requires a negotiated invitation with genuine advance notice. Multiple people who have navigated this from outside the culture describe the same experience. Being told warmly and sincerely, you must pop round sometime, and discovering eventually that this phrase is a social closing gesture. It means the conversation was pleasant. It is not a scheduling proposal. You can live next to a British person for 20 years, and that doesn't make you someone who can knock without calling first. The warmth is real. The invitation in most cases is not. There is an entire vocabulary operating in British public space that requires no words. When you make eye contact with a stranger on the street, something must happen. Eye contact followed by nothing reads as either aggression or profound strangeness. The minimum response is the pressed lips expression, lips pulled in slightly, slight nod, brief. It says, I see you, I'm not a threat, I'm asking nothing of you. Above that, the nod, downward to a stranger as respectful acknowledgement, upward to someone you know slightly as a warmer signal. And these distinctions are never taught. They are absorbed through years of participation in a system that nobody designed and everyone maintains. Nod in the wrong direction and you will not be corrected. You will simply be read accurately as someone who learned this from the outside rather than the inside. The angle of a chin carrying information that would take a paragraph to say out loud. When something makes you absolutely seethe, a queue jumper, a phone on speaker on the bus, someone who took the last parking space and didn't acknowledge it, you do not let on. The available tools are precisely calibrated and strictly limited. First, the look. A controlled gaze that communicates everything and says nothing. Then, if strictly necessary, the tut. One only, never more than one, because more than one is a scene. Then, in extreme circumstances, the audible sigh. You go home and you describe the injustice in full to whoever is there. This is the British way. What nobody quite names, but what the system reveals on close inspection, is that the tut is not aimed at the offender at all. It is a social broadcast to nearby witnesses, a performance for the surrounding court of public opinion, confirming that you have noticed, that you disapprove, and that you will be doing absolutely nothing about it. The audience is the point. If there is one biscuit left on a plate and someone offers it to you, do not take it. They are offering it because they want it and cannot take it without appearing greedy. The correct move is to decline, which allows them to take it while appearing generous for having offered. This sounds trivial. It is not. It is a precise window into one of the deepest engines of British social behaviour. The performance of not wanting. Desire is permitted. Displaying desire is not. The three-stage gift acceptance runs on the same logic. Refuse once, refuse twice, accept on the third offer. Accepting on the first offer signals that you were waiting for it, which of course you were. The supermarket fridge follows the same logic. If someone is standing at the section you need, you drift nearby and pretend with real commitment to study something adjacent until they move. Then you wait a moment longer before approaching, so they don't realise you are waiting. A significant portion of British social language is ritual closure rather than genuine proposition. You'll have to come over sometime means the conversation was pleasant enough to end warmly. We should get coffee means I like you as an exit line. Does anyone want anything from the shops? The correct answer is no, these are not invitations. They are warm goodbyes wearing the costume of invitations. The dinner party arrival rule runs on the same logic. If invited for 7 o'clock, arrive at 7:15. Arriving at 7 means the host is not ready. The stated time is not the actual time. And none of this is ever explained because the explaining would require naming the gap between what is said and what is meant. And naming that gap is the one thing the entire system is designed to avoid. You learn it, as most people learn most things here, by getting it wrong first and quietly working out why. Talking openly about money, what you earn, what your house cost, what something was priced at, is considered by many British people to be faintly vulgar. The rule has a complicated relationship with class. The money is visible everywhere in the vocabulary used, the postcode lived in, the school attended, but it is never spoken directly. One sharp observation that circulates widely captures the political edge of this. If people do not discuss what they earn with each other, the only winner is the employer. That pushback has gained significant traction, particularly among younger people who increasingly read the money taboo not as modesty, but as a mechanism that protects existing power. Both readings are probably right. The rule was never neutral. It simply presented itself as good taste. Rules about what cannot be said are always underneath rules about what cannot be changed. The silence around money in Britain has always had an architecture. The writer Nancy Mitford, in a famous 1954 essay, introduced the terms you and non-you to describe how vocabulary in England functions as a precision class signalling system invisible to outsiders. The specific words she catalogued, looking glass versus mirror, lavatory versus toilet, what versus pardon, have shifted in the decades since, but the underlying system has not. The choice between sofa and settee, between pudding and dessert, between saying lunch or dinner or supper for meals at different times of day, none of these words carry meaning in themselves. All of them carry meaning in context, read instantly and automatically by people who grew up inside the code. The one advantage for people learning this from outside, newcomers get a pass. You are not playing the same game, so the judgments largely suspend. You float above the semaphore, briefly and accidentally exempt from a system that has been running unannounced for centuries. In most of the world, the birthday is the day when the person celebrating receives drinks bought by others, dinners paid for, warmth directed inward. In Britain, this logic is cleanly reversed. The birthday person buys the drinks, their birthday, their treat. People who have encountered this rule from outside the culture describe the same moment of confusion. The birthday person heading to the bar, the guest waiting to be bought a drink, the long puzzled pause that follows. The rule is never explained because nobody thinks to explain it. It is simply the water they swim in. And the logic, once visible, is entirely consistent with everything else in this culture. Your birthday is your event. Your event makes you the host. And the host, in Britain, always pays. Not because it is expected of them, because hosting is an act of agency. And agency here is always accompanied by cost. If a British person teases you, mocks your music taste, imitates something you said, calls you something gently unflattering as a greeting, there is a high probability that they like you considerably. The register of British friendship runs on what researchers studying social linguistics call mock hostility, warmth expressed through calibrated ridicule rather than direct affirmation. Being teased means someone has assessed that you can handle it, which means they respect you. The absence of teasing is, counterintuitively, the cooler signal. Excessive politeness towards someone you know is a mild social frost. One person put it with perfect economy. Be extra polite to people you hate. Feel free to roast and curse out your friends. Once you understand this, everything reframes. What looked like cruelty was intimacy. What looked like warmth, the careful formality, the considered politeness, was the performance. The banter was the real thing all along. Nothing compresses all of these rules into a single annual event the way Christmas does. Polling conducted every year finds British people consistently reporting high anxiety about family conflict, financial pressure, and the gap between the Christmas they are supposed to be having and the one they are actually having. And yet the performance continues with identical intensity the following December. The specific creak of a pulled cracker at a table that has already reached its social tension threshold, the particular silence after the King's speech, the smell of Brussels sprouts nobody requested, but somebody cooked because Christmas requires them. This is not masochism, it is collective theatre. Christmas as a national performance of togetherness, where the gap between the ideal and the reality is not a failure of the tradition, it is the tradition. The polite smile, stretched above a present being mentally returned in January, is the same smile that has been running since chapter 1. Not bad means excellent. A bit tricky means something has already defeated 3 qualified people. Interesting is a polite catastrophe. George Orwell, whose essays on the English character remain among the most penetrating documents in the language, identified what he called a talent for not saying things, a preference for the implied over the declared that hardened by the Second World War, into something close to a survival mechanism. Battle reports described catastrophic losses in the language of mild inconvenience. A ship gone down with hundreds aboard became a difficult situation. In daily life, the system operates with the same precision at every register. One person captured its full emotional range in a single sentence. Abso-fucking-lutely marvellous. Reserved for use the week your mum died, your partner cheated on you, you lost your job, and the cat left you for the neighbour. The understatement is not denial, it is dignity maintained at extraordinary personal cost. If someone lets you out at a junction, waves you through on a narrow road, or holds the lift, and you do not acknowledge it, something has been taken that cannot be returned. The acknowledgement does not need to be large, it needs to exist. A hand raise, a nod, a brief wave. Without it, the social contract has been accepted without being honoured, and the person who gave way is left with something that sits with them longer than it should. This is the connective tissue under all the other rules, the belief that small gestures of acknowledgement are what keep the whole system functioning. Thank the bus driver when you get off. Say please when you order. Say thank you when you receive. These are not optional courtesies layered on top of the real interaction. For many British people, they are the real interaction. The content is almost secondary. Research into emotional suppression in British culture has documented a genuine cost running underneath the composure. Unspoken grief, loneliness, wearing the clothes of self-sufficiency, the specific ache of feelings that were never given language. One observer who had lived here for nearly 20 years put it directly. They will be warm, they will be generous, they will stand in the rain and raise their hand to a stranger, and they will not tell you what is actually wrong. Both things are true at the same time. What is preserved, the dignity, the composure, the refusal to burden others, is a genuine and hard-won value. What is lost, the named thing, the spoken grief, the direct need, leaves a gap that the politeness, however extraordinary, cannot quite close. The crossing is empty again, the light is red. And the person who has been waiting for the correct colour, for the invisible permission, for the social compact to hold one more time, is still there, perfectly still, in no particular hurry. You have watched this before and saw rule following, rigidity, something slightly absurd, but you have seen the pub mental cue now, and the one finger thank you on a road with no one watching, and the person pretending to study the wrong shelf, and the Christmas table where everyone is performing fine. You know now that it is not about the light. It is about something older and quieter. The belief that the agreement holds even when nobody is enforcing it. That the form is worth keeping because the form is what keeps everything else together. The light turns green, the person crosses, and you wonder just for a moment whether that is the loneliest thing in the world or the most quietly hopeful.